Discover the unbreakable bond between mother and child. In today's story, a mother shares how she transformed the brief 97 days of her son's life into a beacon of hope for many. Join us for this touching journey. Welcome to Stories of Hope. I'm Christine Hotchkiss. Each week I bring you stories that inspire, educate, and give you hope. I want to thank my sponsor and podcast producer, the Motivated Mind Group. The bond between a mother and her child goes beyond the heart. It begins in the womb and lasts even beyond their last breath. My guest today is Stephany Luithly, whose brief 97 days with her son William left an enduring mark, not just in her, but in the lives of the countless parents she's since uplifted. Welcome to Stories of Hope, Stephany.
Thank you for having me.
I'm even more blessed that you came from Minnesota.
Yeah, the cold tundra. It's
okay.
warm up there today, though.
Is that?
Yeah.
Now, I also understand that today marks a significant day.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about baby William.
Yes.
What is today's unique day?
So today marks 97 days of his 97-day-long life. So at about 6:30 Minnesota time, 6:31, it will be longer that he's been gone than when he was here. So
I understand that statement.
Yeah.
That 97 days is a very short time frame.
It is. It's a whole lifetime, though.
Tell me about baby William.
Yes. So my son William was born on March 25th, less than 12 hours after I got checked into the hospital and started the induction process. He was a week overdue. He was born 9 pounds, 6 ounces. Pregnancy, labor, everything was, I don't want to say perfect, but it was all as expected. And then at his 24-hour screening before we were going home the next morning, they did a test called CCHD testing. And basically it measures the oxygen level going into the heart and then the oxygen that comes out of the heart, and should be within like 1 or 2%. And his was 14% different.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the blood going into his heart was very much so oxygenated. It was 100%. Going out was right about 86%. And they were like, oh, it might just be the machine. Not a big deal. Turns out the next morning at 10 a.m., he had a echocardiogram done, and they found a heart defect, CHD, congenital heart defect. It was critical aortic stenosis with a bicuspid aortic valve. Basically what that means, Reader Digest version, is the aortic valve of your heart is connected to the left side of your heart. The left side of your heart is the main pump for the blood going into the rest of your organs. William's heart was pumping really, really hard. The left side of his heart was pumping really, really hard to get the blood out, but his aortic valve was the stenosis means like really tight and skinny. And so it was kind of like a hose. If you put your finger over a hose, the blood wasn't necessarily getting backed up, but the left side of his heart was like really, really trying to get it out. And the bicuspid valve is actually very common. It's the most common heart defect. It's like 2% of the population have it. My husband actually has it, and we found that out because of my son. But yeah, to kind of go back to William, he was in the hospital his whole life. He had 2 cath procedures, which is surgery through your groin. So they didn't want to like crack open his chest right away. And those procedures didn't fix the issue. And so he had to have what's called a Ross procedure, which is open heart, and they swap the valves. They replace, oh my goodness.
So that then the blood would be coming in slower and pumping out at an even pace?
Doing what it is,
Oh,
what it's supposed to be, what the majority of our hearts do.
Okay.
So he had that Ross procedure done, and it was not ideal because he had it done at 3 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
And they said there was like a 40% chance that he wasn't going to make it out of surgery.
Oh my
He
goodness.
did.
Okay.
And he was doing really, really well, recovering. And then 2 days later, the night before they were going to close his chest up, because with babies, they don't close it up right away because they're still growing and they don't want to like constrict the heart after it's been assaulted, they say, after surgery. So they were going to close up his chest, and they were like, you could be out of here in a week.
That's good news.
Really good news.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were super, super excited, really stoked about it. And
he's already started his journey in life with so much.
Yes.
What was his spirit like?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's a lot for a little one to come into.
Yeah.
Physically and
yeah,
emotionally.
Yeah, 100%. I knew William the best. I take that.
And you should, because
everywhere
the bond
I go.
starts with the mom.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But I also had a lot of like his nurses take me aside, take my husband and I aside and be like, I've worked with a lot of babies, and this baby has the biggest personality we've ever seen.
Wow.
He was famous for his side eye. So anytime somebody would come up to his bed, he would like...
Oh, so he'd be looking, who's that?
He knew.
Oh,
he was like, he was either like, hey, what's up? Or he was like, what the hell are you doing? Like,
because he's been poked and prodded already so much. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So aside from like opinionated and like big personality, he was strong, like strong. Like I said, he got through that surgery when it was like 40% chance he wasn't going to make it.
Okay.
And that night before he was going to be closed up, he actually went into cardiac arrest.
Oh my.
Yes. And they had to do CPR on him for 58 minutes.
58
minutes.
That poor little chest of his.
I know. And he did have his chest open, so it was a little, I mean, it was still traumatic, of course, to his body, but it was a little less like this and a little more like massaging, if you can imagine.
It's still traumatic.
So traumatic. But he made it through.
Okay.
They put him on, it's called ECMO. It's lung and heart support. It's life support.
A machine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Big machine. Lots of tubes. And basically that was doing the work for him. It was probably a week and a half before they switched his heart support to something else, which we could go into that, but yeah.
And his spirit's still good.
His spirit's so good. I mean, he was definitely tired. You could tell he was very medicated, but he would like push through, they would call it. So he should be sedated at this point, and he would like wake up and be like, hey, what's up? And they're like, dude, you're supposed to be sleeping.
Oh, no.
So yeah, I mean, again, super strong. Really, I said he was like the Aries of all Aries. Very strong-willed, knew what he wanted, and he would let you know. So, yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the spirit of baby William.
Yes.
That's very traumatic on you too, and Dad.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how you felt. Both of you, actually. I can't go with just one, even though we know the bond begins with mom first, and then you're going through that probably more so than Dad because you're right there.
Yeah.
Tell me about the emotional part for you.
So at first it was really blurry, like any really traumatic experience. It's really, you're kind of just like going through the motions. It's fuzzy. You don't really know what's coming next. And we really didn't know what's coming next. We don't have any other children. So this was our first. And so we just kind of were going through the motions at first. And then I actually had to be admitted because I was preeclamptic postpartum 3 days after he was born. I was in the same hospital, but that was a whole thing on its own. So I was sleeping by myself. I couldn't sleep in his room. And that was probably the hardest emotionally on me because I almost refused to be admitted because I wanted to be at his bedside.
Right, but that wouldn't have done any good for you either.
Exactly. And it wouldn't have helped anybody in the situation. So that was probably the most emotional part for me, aside from obviously when he passed away. But my husband is like the best human in the world. That's gonna make me cry.
It's okay. We have to be vulnerable for people to relate because we're talking about baby William.
Yeah.
We're talking about what you actually had to go through at the same time he's going through his own trauma.
Yeah.
But then there's Dad. He's got both of you that he has to, I don't like to use the phrase be strong for, but I'm sure he felt he did.
Yeah. He is very even keeled. He doesn't get rattled by much. He's very welcoming, very kind, always has a joke to crack. Okay. And that did not waver. The nurses loved being in our room.
Because he was being funny?
Because he was being hilarious.
Well, you know what? Sometimes they say that humor is what gets us through our...
100%.
Yes.
That definitely got him through it. So for us, it was a lot of communication, a lot of talking about especially when we started having to make decisions about care for William, what we were going to do next, what we thought was like too far, what all of those things. That was when we both kind of would break down, and it was just the two of us. And in a weird way, it was like the most connected we ever were before that. And that hasn't changed since he's passed, which is amazing. But yeah, so I definitely was more of the outwardly emotional one. I was crying, I mean, at the drop of anything. And when you become a mom, which I'm sure you can relate to this, your identity shifts anyway.
Absolutely.
And so my identity was shifting, being his mom and feeling this like overwhelming, earth-shattering love. And also having to figure out, okay, how do I be his mom when he's critically ill? How do I be his mom when he's going into these surgeries that's like, he's not going to survive? And then he does survive. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how there was a part of me that was like, I'm not worthy, but like, why was I chosen to do this? And I think now looking back at it and talking to other moms that kind of went through a similar situation, I've been through a lot of mental health issues before this. And I truly believe that all of that stuff kind of led up to being William's mom. And now getting to share his story, like, of course I'm emotional today. Of course today sucks, but like the pride that I get to tell his story and like carry it around is like the best thing in the world.
And I'm glad you're actually sharing that so that other mothers and fathers can say, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I've got someone else that has been through something, maybe not the exact same thing, but something quite similar.
Yeah.
So I want to actually come back to the emotional part. Were you told throughout this whole process that there was a possibility he wasn't going to survive?
Yes.
Tell me more.
And over and over.
Because
and
then he
over
would go
again.
to surgery, then he would recover. Then they would, you were going through an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, the whole time.
And this baby is still strong, spirited.
Yeah.
Tell me about the emotion on this roller coaster that both of you had to endure.
Yeah. So for me, what I've learned is I can speak for myself best in this situation. There were several times in this emotional roller coaster where we would go down, and I would go to William's bedside and I'd whisper to him like, it's okay, we'll be okay. And sorry, you're gonna make me cry. Thanks. I haven't told very many people that. But I think that's what being a good mom is, I want more than anything, and will for the rest of my life, for that to be different. But it wasn't. And so watching him go through surgery after surgery after surgery and cardiac arrest and all of the other like pokes and prods, and it got to a point because he had so many IVs where they couldn't find another spot for an IV. And so how is he going to get this medication? How is he going to get that medication? And I just had this overwhelming feeling like I have to tell him it's okay. If you're ready, you tell us. Whenever you're ready, you tell us. And that happened like 4 or 5 times when it's just him and I in the room. And my husband and I Alex is my husband's name. Alex and I talked about it a lot, about where that line was, how much we were going to put him through, how much more we were going to put him through. And we balance each other out very well with emotions. He is very logical. I'm very emotional. And it almost like flip-flopped because he was like, we have to give him a chance. And I'm like, babe, we have given him a chance. We've given him all of the chances, and so we would agree what the next step was. Okay, this next step that they're telling us, we'll do it. This next time they want to meet with us, I would agree. I think it's good that we sit down and talk with them, see what they have to say. And then when it came time, we knew. And I had told Alex a couple weeks before, like, I know how this ends.
Oh, wow.
And as terrible as that is to say, and to say to the person, well, my second favorite person, we started saying that to each other. You're my second favorite person aside from William. Right. But to tell the person that I love, like the adult that I love the most, that like, I already know the outcome. That was probably like the last dip that we took and William was taking. And I think my husband needed to hear it from the doctors, but I think walking away from that conversation with just the two of us going into talking with the doctors about the next steps, that was definitely the most emotionally like draining, and it all started, trickling down from there. He died 2 days later, or 1 day later, 24 hours later. We had his funeral, then moving on from that and trying to figure out how to do life afterwards. But there was always this little piece of hope, and we would remind each other that like, we'd pinky promise at the end of every conversation, no matter what happens, him and I are going to be okay. Because we owe that to William at this point. Like, he's done enough for us, so we can't just like dissolve after this. That would be ridiculous. No. So we would promise each other, okay, we're gonna be okay. And then we would look at each other and be like, we're gonna go back in the doors. We made it. It was on purpose when we went into his room to make it light, to make it a place where the nurses could do their job and not have to worry about us like putting extra stuff on it. And that helped us too. It definitely helped us kind of, we're in this crappy, really, really hard uphill battle situation every day, every moment. Sleeping was like really hard.
Almost none.
Right? Yeah. It feels impossible in a hospital room, but we did it, and we would wake up and we just had this understanding that like we made the decision, not just for William, not just for the nurses, but also for ourselves, that we are going to live and be as light as we possibly can in this situation.
And before we get into that, I want you to share with us that last moment, because I can relate.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites and one of the most painful.
We don't get to say goodbye.
No.
I got to say goodbye.
Yeah, so did we.
For people who don't get to say goodbye.
Yeah.
What was that last, whatever time frame you want to recall for you and for your husband and for William?
I just was writing about this the other day, actually. The staff at that hospital was amazing, and they gave us the option to lay with him. He was in this warmer bassinet his whole life. And they were like, we're going to get him in a big bed if you want to. And if you guys want to lay with him, we would love for you to have that time. And leading up to laying with him, we had his grandparents, minus my dad. We had two of his aunts, actually three of his aunts, two of his uncles. One of his uncles, my older brother, baptized him.
Oh, wow.
Which was, beautiful. So beautiful. My mother-in-law had water from the River Jordan that she was gifted like 25 years ago, that she stumbled across and was like, if you want, you can use it. And we're like, that's amazing. And my brother is ordained online. He's done a couple of weddings. But he baptized him with all of us standing around. I got to like stroke his head. I just watched the video the other day. Very intimate that day. Everybody got their time to kind of kiss him, say goodbye. And then they left. We got in the big bed with William. And even though it was a big deal to move him, he had a lot of tubes and wires and all of the things. So we knew it was going to be taxing on him. We knew it wasn't going to last very long. But they gave us about 30 minutes. Everybody left the room. I had his playlist on my phone playing, and we laid with him. We talked to him. We said goodbye in our own way. I just got a tattoo. I wish this wasn't so tight I could show you, but Guess How Much I Love You is the book that I read to him over and over and over again. And I read him that book. And I gifted my husband the night before our wedding a compass. On the inside cover, it says, in my handwriting, it's engraved, it says, so you can find me in every lifetime.
Wow.
And my husband put that on his abdomen. And we laid there and cried, and then they came in. And we chose to extubate him. There was a couple of different ways we could have done like removing supports. But being intubated for pretty much his whole life, we heard over and over again how uncomfortable that was. And I was like, I would love for him to be as comfortable as possible. So
absolutely.
Yeah, he was very, very sedated. He actually squeezed my finger a little bit right before. And the doctor who extubated him saw that. And I kind of made eye contact with her. And she was like, nope, we won't do it right this second. They gave him a little bit more sedation so that he was very, very comfortable, very much asleep. And they extubated him. And the song that was playing was Rise Up by Andra Day. And the doctor who extubated him under her breath said, rise up, little man. I don't think she knew that we could hear her. And then he just fell asleep, or he was asleep, but he stopped breathing after about a minute, maybe a little bit less. And they had turned off all of that. There was no alarms or anything. They turned all of that off so that it wasn't like jarring to us.
Right. More traumatic.
Yes. And then we got about an hour afterwards laying with him. They unplugged him from everything, like cut the tubes and stuff. And we got to hold him. And it was, I'm so sad for moms and parents that don't get to do that. It's incredibly heartbreaking, really traumatic. But
there was actually, I think, a freedom.
Yes, 100%.
There's a freedom in that because that whole time he was hooked up to all these different things. You couldn't hold him like a baby should be held when they first come into this life.
Yes, I couldn't pick him up. I have a picture, actually. They had, one of their doctors was taking pictures for us. We had asked if somebody could do that. And there's a picture of right after I picked him up and I put his cheek to my cheek. And it's painful to look at, but it's also like,
it's your last picture and your last memory.
I finally got to pick him up.
Right?
Finally.
I tell people all the time, take pictures. Because they're always like, why you always take so many pictures? Well, because that may be the last picture you have and it has captured a memory in time. It can be painful, but it can also be a comfort, which you just expressed just now.
Yeah. And that's a part of it, right? That's being human.
Absolutely.
Is feeling the pain. The picture, yes, it's going to carry pain because it was a very painful moment. But also that's what being human is.
Absolutely.
To have the honor of loving somebody so much that it's so painful and to capture it, that's incredible.
Thank you for sharing that with us. What was the turning point after that? Because now you have to go back to a different world that was before he was a different world. I say because you didn't know who he was prior to that, and now you know who he was, and he's not coming home with you.
Yes, 100%. The first thing is that I shut the nursery door. It was a wreck when we got home. I was like, just shut the door. For right now, I just want to be with Alex. The days leading up to the funeral, we were really lucky. We had a lot of family in town that we were able to grieve with. That night, we had a bunch of family come over, which was fabulous. The memorial service was beautiful and amazing, and it was standing room only. There's so many people there, which meant so much to me. And my husband and I actually went on a 4-day trip. We stopped in Cheyenne to see my family, and then drove to Colorado, and we stayed in the mountains with our 2 dogs, and for 3 nights. And we went on a hike, and we just existed together. We talked about whatever came up. We cried, we laughed, we danced, we did all of the things that I think propelled us into the next chapter. And I recommend that huge. Like if the opportunity arises where you can just get away and be away from people, we kind of like put our phones away. We took pictures in the morning. We definitely wanted to take pictures, but intentionally put our phones away, and we're just together, the 2 of us.
Being present in the moment.
Yes.
A lot of people don't do that. And then when you're talking about the dancing and stuff, I tell everybody all the time, celebrate life. You can celebrate a birthday. You can celebrate every day that you're alive. It doesn't have to be on the actual calendar day that you were born. Celebrate 100%. Your achievements. Celebrate whatever. Yeah. And it sounds like that's what you were doing, even though your hearts were breaking.
Yeah.
And they were missing something. You didn't get to have the full feeling.
Yeah.
Long term, you were still celebrating that you even had that opportunity.
Yeah.
I love that.
100%. And celebrating each other, celebrating that, like, we we are still alive. We've survived. It felt like we weren't going to several times. But yeah, that was a conversation we had actually, is like, well, we're alive now. He's not, but we are alive. We've made it through it. So like, what are we going to do now?
You talked about dancing. You talked about photos. We've obviously gone through the journey of the emotions, all of them. In the story that you were sharing, you talked about a playlist. What is this playlist?
So William died on a Wednesday. Tuesday morning, we met with his team and found out that that was what was going to happen. I immediately went to my phone and was like, we need a playlist for tomorrow. There's going to be people coming in saying goodbye to him. We're going to be laying with him. I don't want it to be silent. We always had music playing on the like little TV thing, whether it was like nursery rhymes or we played Pink, and my husband really likes whatever. So we played music all the time. And so I went and I started this playlist of songs that made me think of him. And music is a big part of my husband's life. It's always been a very big part of me. I was like a choir geek my whole life. And so it made sense that it was a part of William's life. And music does something where it like triggers.
It touches your soul.
It brings you right back.
It does.
Yes.
It does.
So yeah, I had that playing all day, and now I write on a blog called Williams Playlist.
Is this a blog that we have access to?
Yes. Yeah. williamsplaylist.blog.
What do you talk about on the blog?
So it's really triggered by each song. So it's either like a memory that's triggered by the song, or, I mean, they're all memories, but, or like a feeling. Yesterday, the one that I posted is Vega by Ed Sheeran. And that is, basically it's a song he wrote in response to finding out his wife had cancer when she was pregnant. And, it just captured how I was feeling so perfectly when William, he was about halfway through his life, so about six weeks in, and I heard it for the first time and I was like, this is perfect. So that's what this week's was about. The next one, or there's one coming up that the song has nothing to do with, like the lyrics of the song have nothing to do with William, but all about a memory of the night of his funeral. So it's all triggered by these songs that are on this playlist, and I keep adding to the playlist, of course, as I hear songs. But
and you talk about the connection with music. I can relate, as a lot of people can. But he didn't have a full life. I say full life past 97 days, where you got to see all the other things about him grow.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that would say, listen to the whispers. Look at the signs. You've explained how music touches you and how you remembered him, even though he didn't even know what those songs were.
Yeah.
What, and people say, oh, there's a sign that he's here or she's here. Do you have anything like that?
100%. Yeah.
What do you share? Share one, if you will, please.
Yes. Butterflies. I saw you had a butterfly tattoo on your foot. I had heard that butterflies signify a lost child a long time ago, before I was even married or in a relationship. But the night we got home from letting William go, Alex and I were sitting on the front step, and a red admiral butterfly like floated down and landed like, I don't know, 2 feet in front of us on our concrete sidewalk. I was like, that's weird. I haven't seen a butterfly all year. And my husband was like, yeah. And our front yard, especially because we hadn't been home in 3 months, there was not flowers. Okay. That butterfly was not coming around.
A lot of grass
anything.
and weeds.
Yes. So it landed, and I was like, oh, that's really sweet. And then we went back to talking. And then 5 minutes later, it's still sitting in the same spot. My husband's like, oh, I got to let the dogs out, So we let the dogs out, and the butterfly like flittered up and landed in the same exact spot. And it was there every single day.
No.
Every day leading up to his funeral. And it was the same one, because the right tip, the right wing tip was missing. And so it landed. And then we had like a little plaque on our front step that's now in the memorial garden we made for him, that basically just says like, I'll be waiting for you whenever you're ready. And that butterfly landed on that plaque right before we left for Colorado. And I was like, okay. And it's like a knowing, Glennon Doyle calls it her knowing is like in your soul, in the depths of your soul, you just know that it's them. And you
do.
Yeah.
You do. I like the way that you actually described it versus someone else who's had a child that got to live a little bit longer. and they have had those connections.
Yeah.
As we mentioned early on, there's a bond, and it begins in the womb.
Yeah.
And here you had found something similar but different, meaning the same thing.
Yeah.
And comforting your heart. Your journey and your blog, I also understand that you're in the works of starting a nonprofit.
Yes.
What are you wanting to do with this nonprofit?
I'm so glad you asked. I'm so excited about it. The biggest thing, so William was famous for a side eye, but he was also famous because after all of his surgeries and stuff, and all of the tubes, heart babies specifically, they can't wear clothes and they can't be swaddled because there's a lot of things. So his grandma Christy got him a robe before he was, well, maybe right after he was born. And I went home a couple weeks after he had had a surgery, and I was like, man, I wish there was something he could wear because he looks cold. You know, nobody wants to lay there just like naked everywhere all the time, you know? So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to grab this. And actually I had my sister-in-law bring it to the hospital, and the nurses immediately were like, this is an excellent idea. So in an infant robe, they picked him up, they slid it under him, and he was able to kind of be swaddled with like tying the robe and stuff. And he immediately was, you could tell he was more comfortable. And so we really, really want to provide robes for heart babies. To start with, it'll be babies. There'll be more after that, I'm sure. But so providing robes for babies, and also when your baby is sick, it's something that not very many people can understand, and you don't feel seen a lot of the time. You feel very like isolated, very alone, very it's a unique experience, and it's not because you're not looking around going, you should understand this. It's like, no, I get it. Like would not understand this unless I was in this situation. So we want to help the parents or the family supporting these babies feel seen as well. And so we want to support them with some of the things that were really helpful for us. I journaled every day, and I think that's really, really important. Even if you're not a writer, it's like, write it down so that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whether your baby survives and goes on to live a full, happy, healthy life, or our situation where you get 97 days or less, at least you have that documented. You know every moment of their life. So journal is going to be involved. DoorDash was like...
DoorDash.
So important to us because we were living in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
So we want to put
the
DoorDash
services
gift
that
cards.
you need.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So just like little things like that.
Convenient stuff.
Yes.
Because your time away is very limited.
Yeah.
If at all.
Yes. And to help support them and make them feel seen with like a handwritten note. I'm like, if nothing else, if we just donate the robes, I want to make sure that there's a note with it that says, I see you and I understand and I'm sorry, you know, just little simple things. And I don't
like a
need
care
anything
package.
back. Exactly.
Love it.
Exactly.
Love
Just something
it.
to make them feel seen. So that's what we want to do. Yeah, I don't want to say any more right now.
No, don't. No, we don't want you to, but you will tell me when it's official.
100% I will.
Because I would love to share. We would love to share that.
Yeah, I love that.
On this journey in sharing your story, what are you hoping to provide to other individuals that may walk the similar journey, not the same journey?
Yeah. It's going to sound cliche, but I want to spread hope. William's 97 days was filled with hope. There were a lot of downs that we talked about earlier. A lot of where it felt like hope was gone or should be, you know, oh my gosh, there's a 40% chance he's not going to make it. And to have somebody else come to us, like we had at the hospital he was at in Minneapolis, they have a service, child life specialist. They come in and kind of sit with you. They have a therapy dog, and I'm a huge dog person. And they brought the dog in, and we would sit and chit chat, and that brought me hope. As simple as somebody coming in and saying, again, I see you.
I care.
Yes. And so I want to make sure that we carry on the strength, the legacy of strength that William had. I want to make sure that it's the only way to keep him around now. Unfortunately, I wish he was here physically, but to keep him around, but also the other people that are in the situation that don't have somebody that makes them feel hopeful, or somebody to walk in the room and be like, hey, it's going to be okay, or it's not going to be okay. And either way, you're going to wake up tomorrow. The sun's going to rise tomorrow. And yeah, that's what I want to do. I really, really want to help other parents, families that are in this situation, and people who are supporting those families. That's a big one too. So yeah, hope and strength.
Such a small word with such a big meaning.
Huge
and a
meaning.
big need, right?
Yeah.
Thank
Especially
you
Maisie.
for being
Thank
my
you.
guest and sharing your story. Making me cry because I can relate, but thank you so much. This inspiring story was brought to you by MMG, your global creative agency based right here in downtown Chandler.